Maybe one day you'll wake up in the morning and realize that the money in your wallet has lost half its value overnight. The coffee that cost you $2 yesterday now costs $4. By next week, it might cost $20. You rush to the store to buy groceries, only to find people filling carts in panic, desperate to exchange paper bills for anything tangible before prices rise again. This isn't a scene from a dystopian novel. It has happened repeatedly in real history. This terrifying phenomenon is called hyperinflation. And while it may feel distant or exaggerated, understanding it and preparing for it could one day mean the difference between financial ruin and survival. Hyperinflation is not just inflation on steroids. Normal inflation is when prices rise slowly over time, usually a few percent each year. You feel it when groceries become slightly more expensive or when your rent increases gradually. Hyperinflation, however, is when money collapses so quickly that its value disappears almost in front of your eyes. The most famous example is the Weimar Republic in Germany after World War I in 1923. The German mark became so worthless that people used wheelbarrows full of bills just to buy bread. One loaf could cost billions of marks. Families burned banknotes for fuel because it was cheaper than buying firewood. More recently, Zimbabwe in the 2000s experienced inflation rates so extreme that the government issued a $100 trillion no-tan amount that still couldn't buy a simple meal. Venezuela, too, has suffered the devastation of hyperinflation in the past decade, with citizens struggling to keep up as they're lost almost all practical use. It's easy to think this only happens in faraway countries or chaotic times, but the truth is that the underlying causes of hyperinflation exist in many economies today. Governments that spend far more than they earn, massive debts that grow uncontrollably, and central banks that print money without restraint create conditions ripe for disaster. Even if you live in a relatively stable country, global interconnectedness means no one is immune to the ripple effects. Financial crises, wars, pandemics, and political instability can push economies toward the brink. So how do we know if hyperinflation might be approaching? There are early warning signs that every citizen can learn to recognize. One is government debt spirals. If a country constantly borrows money just to pay interest on existing debt, that's a red flag. Another is uncontrolled money printing. When central banks issue more and more currency to solve problems without corresponding growth and productivity, the real value of that currency erodes. You might not see it immediately, but soon you'll notice that your money buys less each day. Watch for rapid devaluation. Foreign exchange rates can expose the weakness of a currency quickly. If your local currency suddenly drops dramatically against the dollar or euro, it could be a sign that trust in it is collapsing. Keep an eye on economic indicators like consumer price index spikes, ballooning fiscal deficits, and headlines about countries struggling to repay debt or propping up collapsing banks. But knowledge alone won't save you when prices begin spiraling. You need strategies, practical, actionable steps to protect yourself and your family. The first priority is to shield your savings. In hyperinflation, holding large amounts of cash is a recipe for disaster. Imagine saving $10,000 for years, only to see it buy a loaf of bread tomorrow. Instead, history shows that tangible assets hold value when paper money collapses. Real estate, gold, and silver have repeatedly served as safe havens. In Zimbabwe, people turned to gold dust to trade for essentials. In Venezuela, families who had stored gold or dollars managed to weather the storm, while others lost everything. Another strategy is diversifying internationally. If possible, hold part of your wealth in foreign currencies from stable nations or in markets less vulnerable to collapse. This way you're not entirely dependent on the fate of one economy. And don't forget debt. In hyperinflation, owing money can be a double-edged sword. In some cases, debt becomes meaningless because the currency collapses. But often, debts are adjusted or tied to stronger currencies, leaving borrowers crushed. Paying down debt aggressively is one of the smartest defenses, freeing you from obligations that could balloon uncontrollably. Survival is not only about protecting savings, it's also about sustaining your livelihood. If money becomes unreliable, people revert to the basics of value: goods, services, and skills. Done. In Weimar Germany, teachers were paid with food instead of money. In Venezuela, bartering became widespread. A bag of rice could be exchanged for medical services. Skills that cannot be easily replaced. Carpentry, healthcare, mechanics, farming become invaluable when traditional wages are meaningless. Investing in self-sufficiency is another key adaptation. If you can grow food, collect water, or generate your own energy, you become less dependent on collapsing systems. For example, in Argentina during its economic crisis, urban gardens became a lifeline for families who couldn't afford supermarket prices. And though it sounds extreme, geographic relocation is sometimes necessary. Moving to a more stable country, or even from city to countryside, can make the difference between despair and survival. But survival is only part of the story. Some people not only endured hyperinflation, they found ways to thrive in its aftermath. Chaos always creates new opportunities. In Zimbabwe, entrepreneurs who held foreign currency bought assets at rock-bottom prices, only to see them regain value when the economy stabilized. In post-war Germany, those who held on to property or tools of production were able to rebuild wealth as the new currency took root. Even today, Venezuela has seen the rise of businesses that cater to foreign currency transactions, showing that adaptation creates openings for those willing to act. Another often overlooked lifeline in hyperinflation is community. When money fails, social capital, trust, relationships, networks becomes priceless. In every example of hyperinflation, those with strong community ties were better able to share resources, barter services, and protect each other from exploitation. Imagine a neighborhood where one person grows vegetables, another repairs clothes, and another provides medical care. Together, they form a microeconomy that cushions the blow of collapsing national systems. Human connection and cooperation become the currency of survival. Finally, there is the long road of recovery. Hyperinflation never lasts forever. At some point, governments introduce a new currency, stabilize the economy, or receive international support. The journey back is painful, but those who prepared, who invested in tangible assets, who built resilient skills in communities, often emerge stronger. They have not only survived, but positioned themselves for new beginnings. In the ruins of hyperinflated economies, new wealth is created by those with vision and resilience. So why does this matter today? Because the seeds of hyperinflation exist in many places right now. Massive government debts, money printing during crises, fragile global supply chains, and political instability all hint at possible storms ahead. No one can predict with certainty where or when hyperinflation might strike, but history is clear. It can happen anywhere. The time to learn and prepare is before the collapse, not after. The lesson is sobering, but empowering. Hyperinflation is one of the most frightening economic realities imaginable, but it is not unbeatable. By studying history, by watching the signs, and by making practical adjustments, we can shield ourselves and even find ways to thrive in uncertainty. Money may lose its meaning, but human ingenuity, resilience, and cooperation never will. And perhaps that is the ultimate truth. In times when currencies collapse, what really matters is not what we hold in our wallets, but the strength of what we hold in our minds, our hands, and our hearts. Thank you for joining me today. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Together, we can make finance a force for good.